I switched from an iPhone 14 Pro Max, the best of the best with the dynamic island, some of the best cameras, and the best battery life that exists in an iPhone, down to an iPhone 13 mini. And I'm not the only one doing this, by the way. We're seeing this huge wave in the tech community of other creators who are stepping down a level to this exact phone. So what is it about this phone that's causing a disruption in the tech community a year and a half after it was actually launched? So we were all really excited about this iPhone 14 Pro Max when it came out. And with all that tech, that beautiful design, and the ProMotion crisp display, how could you not love it? But the iPhone 14 Pro Max was plagued with problems. I don't even think I've ever, in my years of reviewing and testing phones, noticed so many crashes, random rotation in the screen, being unable to swipe up to go home. And I'm not alone. There are thousands, probably tens of thousands of people who are experiencing this exact same problem and this same occurrence. Is it that tech just has to move faster and faster and Apple is struggling to keep up? Is it just that Apple doesn't care because they know we're all gonna buy this phone anyway? I mean, at least there aren't reports of the iPhone catching fire like some other phones that we've noticed on the market. But it all does lead to this resounding consensus that the iPhone 14 Pro Max is a problem. So with that consensus, I was on the search for a new phone, and wanting to stay within the ecosystem, I was still looking for an iPhone, but what features did I value? Or if every phone in the lineup is on the table, what is it about the iPhone that I do love? And it really became a question of what do I need? So the iPhone 14 Pro Max has the best battery life of up to 2 days, which I've tested and it's phenomenal. But after bragging about that, I quickly went back to charging my phone every single night anyway. So for me, as long as I could have a phone that could get me through roughly 1 day, I mean, ideally without needing one of many battery packs that I've reviewed on the channel, that would be enough. And that's the key word here, enough. So what phone is enough that I will take advantage of the features to their fullest extent? I don't think everyone needs the power, the screen size, the battery, the performance of a Pro Max phone, even as a creator. So this got me thinking, could I, as an average power user, switch to the lowest phone in the previous lineup? A phone with full one-handed usability, even for me, by the way, who doesn't really have large hands. This became the ultimate test with the iPhone 13 mini. So here it is, the iPhone 13 mini. And let me start by saying, yes, you're stepping down when you go from a Pro Max, step down to the lower end lineup, and then jump back a year to the 13 lineup. But this phone in every way is fully loaded and a powerful phone. So you're getting a 5.4-inch screen versus 6.7 inches. It's still an OLED display for crisp blacks and sharp tones. You are losing that 120Hz ProMotion display. But internally, you're getting the previous year's A15 Bionic chip, 4 gigs of RAM over 6, battery is 2,406 milliamps versus 4,323 milliamps, but without the 120Hz, a smaller screen. So if you want a longer term review on the iPhone 13 mini this year, is it still worth it? Then make sure you're subscribed and follow for more. So this phone does also have MagSafe, which I did decide was a feature that I would not compromise on because it is so convenient. But with this phone, you are losing the fast charging capability of that 15 watts, and it looks like it only tops out at 12 watts. Not a huge difference, and I think honestly most people, certainly not myself, are even going to notice this, especially if you're somebody who just charges at night. The cameras both get 4K 60 frames per second. The Mini has a 12 megapixel camera, one standard, one ultra wide. The Pro Max steps up to 3 cameras, a 48 megapixel, 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Of course, with much larger pixels, more vivid color, more intense processing on the device, a LiDAR for better 3D sensing, which obviously leads to much better portrait photos. This is very clearly one of the big differences between the Mini and then a Pro of any year. The front cameras are both 12 megapixels, but Apple proves with the Pro Max that software can directly make your camera hardware better with intelligent autofocus that makes the same megapixel camera look so much more vibrant. So both phones get 5G connectivity, with Pro Max getting faster speeds. So you can see overall there are going to be some trade-offs here. There's no surprise with that. These two phones are not the same phone. They're polar opposites in a lot of ways, but they're still up there with the best of the best. And at a price difference of $10.99 US versus $6.99 US, they really shouldn't be the same. So I've been using this phone for about 2 weeks now. I've been documenting my process as I go here to share with you guys in a longer term video. So I'm going to share more of that and more accurate results in a later video, but overall, I just want to give you a sum up. And I've got to say, this is an amazing phone. I'm always amazed how Apple takes a huge experience on a Pro Max and then confidently scales it down to something that makes a lot more sense and is functionally exactly the same phone. It's been refreshing to use the 13 mini and have it do everything that you would normally expect to do without any downgrade in performance. Browsing the web, navigating CarPlay, even talking on the phone all held up extremely well where it related to battery. So I pushed this thing to its limits, and the only thing that I did actually notice here is the phone started heating up when I was first setting it up, and then when I was downloading everything from my previous backup, and again when I was opening endless tabs in Safari, specifically with Home Depot. In both cases, the heat was enough to cause a massive battery life drop over just a few minutes. So that really brings me to the main point of this video, and probably the reason you're watching this, where the iPhone 14 Pro Max succeeds and the mini leaves room for question, and that's battery life. So initially, when I first started using this phone, it was doing a lot of downloading, a lot of power-intense tasks, and on top of that, I spent a significant amount of time on the phone. You can see it didn't quite make it all the way through the day, actually needing to be charged in the evening. But I knew this was just kind of the perfect storm of extreme performance, so I kept testing. And what I found was that over the days, the average use was enough to last me right through the entire day with about 10% battery remaining, sometimes even up to 50% when I went to go charge it later on at night. The only thing that hindered and that I actually had to stop doing with this phone was using wireless CarPlay in my car. The task of navigating, using maps, and then essentially wirelessly displaying an operating system on your screen led to a massive spike in heat and then a rapid decline in battery. And I mean, that heat was the same case with my 14 Pro Max, but the battery life was obviously much more forgiving when it was quite literally twice the size. So now with this phone, I do use wired CarPlay exclusively. So I'm overall really happy to have a phone where I'm using it to its full advantage, really taking advantage of all of these features. The usability is way more functional and practical in my daily life. With the lack of the sales of this phone, I am afraid that they're not really going to make one of these ever again. So if you did want to secure this phone now, get it before it's gone. With Apple's track record of supporting older phones into their newer software updates, I assume that this phone is actually going to be supported for probably 5 to 6 years minimum. So if you are thinking, is this the right time for me to be buying one? Should I buy the iPhone 13 mini? I would say absolutely yes. If you want the best of the best in terms of performance of today's smartphones without compromising like getting the iPhone SE, I highly recommend this phone. If you want to see how it's holding up longer term, then hit subscribe because I'm going to have much more in-depth videos going over my experience shortly on the channel. Now, in prep of that longer term review, please leave your comments down below on this phone and if you would switch. Also, if you have any questions or anything you want to see that would help you make that change. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.